Have you ever had a bond so deep, so unspoken, that you couldn't quite put it into words? A connection with someone you've known your whole life, but suddenly, it feels different. That's how it was with him, my older stepbrother. Not really family, but not exactly a stranger either. This trip to the farm, it was supposed to be just another break from life. But little did I know, everything was about to change. The air felt heavier, and something in the space between us began to shift. Let me take you there, to the moment everything turned upside down. The drive to the farm felt different from the start. The kind of difference you can't explain but can feel in your chest. As we passed the last gas station, the familiar stretch of the gravel road opened up before us, and something about it just seemed heavier, like the land itself was waiting for something. Waiting for us. It wasn't the kind of heavy you'd expect. No looming dark clouds or impending storm, but a quiet, subtle weight, the kind that sticks to your skin like dust. And as we drove further into the valley, the trees seemed to part like they were embracing us, but also holding us at arm's length. I wasn't sure why I felt it. Maybe it was because, as the miles stretched out, so did the space between my brother and me. We weren't really brothers, after all. Not in the sense that most people would think. Our parents got married later in life, and by the time I was 13, he was already on his way out, off to college. He'd come home on holidays, toss around a football with me in the yard, and tease me about my music choices. But we never really connected, not in the way you think of when you picture a sibling bond. We were just something in between, acquaintances in the same household, that's all. But here we were now, a few years older, him driving, me sitting silently beside him in the passenger seat, tracing the road we were about to take with my eyes. My fingers curled tighter around my sketchbook, knuckles pale, though I wasn't sure why. I had a feeling, though, maybe a gut feeling, that this trip would be different. It was supposed to be a simple 2-week stay at his grandfather's old farm. Nothing glamorous. No Wi-Fi, no air conditioning, just a lot of manual labor to clear out the place before it was sold. It felt like the perfect excuse to take a break from everything. From school, from stress, from all the noise that had built up in my life. But the truth was that there was something I hadn't told him. Something I hadn't told anyone. And it was sitting there, between us, in that quiet space. I watched him as he hummed softly along with the radio, the sunlight catching his face in a way that made it look like he belonged in this perfect, serene scene. He looked annoyingly good in the sunlight. Black t-shirt, forearms tanned from years of working on the farm, dark hair a little ruffled by the breeze. He was the kind of person who just fit into life, like he didn't have to try. Like the world bent just a little bit to make room for him. And here I was, stuck between being his family and not being close enough to know what to do with all these feelings that had been quietly creeping up on me for years. The plan was simple. Help him clean out the farm, spend some time together, and then go back to our separate lives. But that wasn't going to happen, was it? Something in my chest told me that once we crossed that threshold of the old farmhouse, things would never be the same. And yet, I couldn't tell him. I couldn't tell anyone what was happening in my mind. We finally arrived, the sun dipping low in the sky, painting everything in shades of peach and lavender as we pulled up to the farmhouse. It looked like something straight out of an old family photo album. Peeling paint, a porch swing tilted at an angle, weeds taking over the front yard. The place smelled like old hay and wildflowers, nostalgic, earthy, real. I followed him inside, the door creaking as it opened, like the house had been waiting for us. It was quiet, too quiet. The kind of silence that felt like we were trespassing on memories that didn't want to be disturbed. And yet, as he turned to smile at me, there was that flicker in my chest, the one I tried so hard to ignore. Dinner that first night was simple. Sandwiches on the porch, the crickets slowly taking over the valley, the soft hum of the evening air. We didn't talk much, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. I thought I could just forget, just push it all down like I had for years. But the truth was, I wasn't sure I wanted to anymore. I wasn't sure I wanted to pretend that I didn't feel something every time his elbow brushed mine, or when his laugh made my chest tighten. I kept thinking, Maybe this trip would give me the clarity I needed. Or maybe it would only make things more complicated. But one thing was clear. I couldn't stay quiet forever, because something between us, something unspoken, was beginning to surface. And I had no idea where it would lead. The air felt different now. The kind of tension that you can't quite touch but can feel in the space between two people. It wasn't anything obvious. No loud words, no grand gestures. But it was there, hanging in the air like an unfinished sentence. Every time I caught a glimpse of him, when his hand brushed against mine by accident, or when he flashed that crooked grin, something stirred inside me. But I wasn't sure what. And I couldn't tell him. It started subtly, little things. The way his arm grazed mine when he passed me a tool. The way our eyes met just a fraction longer than they should have. It wasn't overt, but it was there. This invisible thread pulling us closer, yet pushing us further at the same time. Every glance, every smile, every laugh we shared felt like it was laced with something else, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. At first, I told myself it was nothing. After all, we were family, or at least family by marriage. We weren't supposed to feel this way about each other. Not this pull, not this awareness that seemed to grow with every passing hour. So I buried it deep. I'd lived with it before, the quiet ache of unspoken attraction. It had always been easy to ignore when he was miles away, in college or wherever life had taken him. But now, with him here, so close, so familiar, it was different. It was like I was seeing him for the first time, not as my stepbrother, but as someone else. Someone I couldn't quite understand but also couldn't let go of. And that scared me. The more we worked together, the more I felt it. The way his laugh echoed in my chest. The way he'd glance at me when he thought I wasn't looking. It wasn't anything loud, nothing overtly suggestive. It was the small things. The way his eyes softened when he caught me staring for too long. Or the way he let a silence stretch between us that felt heavy, pregnant with meaning. I'd catch myself watching him, not just because I had to, but because I couldn't look away. His body, the way he moved, the way the sunlight hit him just right. Everything about him seemed to pull me in. And he noticed. I could tell he noticed. The way he'd turn his head when I looked at him. The way his smirk would slip when our hands brushed. He knew. He had to know. But we never spoke about it, not directly, not with words. Instead, we danced around it. The shared silence, the shared space, all the things we didn't say, and yet, it was all out there, hanging like a banner that neither of us wanted to acknowledge. The day we worked in the barn, clearing out boxes of old farm equipment, was when I felt it most. The barn door creaked open, and the sun poured in through the slats in the wood, making everything look golden, muted, like we were living in an old memory. It felt timeless. But everything about it felt too real, too present. When he peeled off his shirt to work in the heat, the space between us grew heavier. He didn't notice me watching him, of course. He never did. Or maybe he did. Maybe he was waiting for me to say something, to do something. I couldn't tell, but I couldn't look away. I could feel my heart in my throat as I tried to focus on anything but the way his back shifted as he worked. The way his muscles moved beneath his skin, the dust and sweat that clung to him. It was almost too much. And then, when he caught me looking, just a glance, a quick moment before I looked away, something shifted. The air grew thick with unspoken words. He asked if I was okay, but there was more in his voice than just concern. It was a question I couldn't answer. Not without saying more than I was ready to admit. We ended up sitting together on the porch again that night, the evening slipping into nightfall. The crickets hummed around us, the valley stretched out in front of us, and I could feel the weight of the unspoken words between us. It was quiet, but it wasn't comfortable. Not anymore. "You still sketching weird things in your notebooks?" he asked, elbow brushing mine as he passed me a drink. He always asked me questions like that, teasing me about my quiet, artsy ways, but I knew there was more to it now. There had to be. He was different. We were different. I tried to laugh it off, but my smile felt a little too strained. "Yeah, notebooks got bigger. So did the weird things." He laughed, the sound soft and real, and for a second, I almost believed things could go back to normal. But then, I saw it. The way he looked at me. It wasn't just teasing anymore. His gaze lingered a moment longer than it should have. A brief moment, but long enough for me to feel it in my chest. Long enough for the flicker of desire to stir deep inside me. I tried to brush it off, tried to pretend it didn't matter. But it did. And the silence between us felt more charged than ever before. The next morning, we worked together in the barn again. The air was thick with dust, and the light slanted in golden beams across the old, unused equipment. But this time, it was different. This time, every brush of his arm against mine, every shared glance felt loaded with something else. We were still pretending, still carrying the weight of years of silence between us, but it was harder to ignore now. The pull was undeniable. I kept waiting for him to say something, anything. But all he did was smile, his eyes narrowing like he was holding back something too big to say. And I couldn't speak either. Not yet. So, we continued. We worked. We laughed. We talked about everything but what was really going on between us. But I could feel it in the way he looked at me, in the way his hand brushed against mine. Every touch, every word, seemed to be leading us somewhere we hadn't expected to go, and I didn't know if I was ready. But I couldn't deny it anymore. Something was building, something that neither of us could stop, and deep down I wasn't sure I even wanted to. Everything was changing, slowly, subtly, but in a way that felt like a shift too big to ignore. And I wasn't sure what would happen next, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending I didn't feel it, that I didn't see what was right in front of me. This wasn't just a trip, it wasn't just a farm, or a place to clean out old memories. It was something else. Something that had been waiting to happen for a long time. And maybe it was time to finally face it. The day had stretched on, quiet and filled with the hum of the world around us, but there was an undeniable weight in the air. It had been building all week, an undercurrent that neither of us dared to acknowledge, but one that neither of us could escape. And now, as the sun sank low in the sky, casting long shadows over the fields, I felt like it was finally time. The barn, the farmhouse, everything felt familiar, but not quite like it used to be. Something had shifted between us, something neither of us had ever expected. And yet, in the back of my mind, I knew it had always been there. It wasn't a loud, dramatic thing. It wasn't the kind of change that exploded into the open with force. It was quieter than that, subtle, but undeniably real. And yet, despite all the signs, despite every moment of closeness we shared, the unspoken words between us still hung heavy, making every glance feel like a silent question. Every laugh, every brush of the arm was layered with something deeper, something neither of us was ready to face. But we had reached the point where it couldn't be ignored anymore. The tension had built for days, weeks even, until it finally felt like something would break. The question wasn't whether it would happen. The question was how. It happened when we were sitting side by side, just like so many other nights. The porch swing creaked in the quiet of the evening, the crickets singing their familiar song in the distance, and the night sky stretched out before us, deepening into shades of indigo and black. The world outside was calm, but inside, there was nothing but stormy silence, longing, hesitation, and the quiet battle of whether or not we should say the things we'd been keeping inside for far too long. He turned to me, his gaze soft but intense, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. It was just him and me, standing at the edge of something bigger than either of us could have predicted. He didn't say anything at first, just watched me like he was trying to figure out what was happening in my mind, the way he always did. And I had been trying to figure that out for myself. I wasn't ready to speak. I didn't know what I would say. The words I needed to say were stuck, trapped behind a wall of fear and uncertainty. But he was patient. He always had been, and for the first time, I could see the walls breaking down in his eyes. "Do you ever wonder if we missed our chance?" he asked, the words slipping out before I had a chance to stop them. His voice was quiet, almost a whisper, like he was afraid to break the fragile moment that hung between us. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of his words in my chest. "What do you mean?" I asked, knowing exactly what he meant, but not knowing how to respond. "Everything," he said softly. "This, us. We've always danced around it, always kept our distance. But now it feels different, like maybe we should have said something a long time ago." And there it was, the thing we had both been avoiding, the confession that had been hanging over us for days, maybe longer. I could see it in his eyes, the vulnerability that had always been there but never acknowledged, the thing we were both too afraid to face. I didn't know how to say it, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to ruin everything between us. I didn't want to lose you." He smiled softly, that familiar crooked grin that made my heart skip a beat. "I don't want to lose you either," he said, his voice full of quiet sincerity. And then, without hesitation, he reached out, his hand brushing against mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. It wasn't an explosion of emotion. It wasn't a big dramatic gesture. It was simple. And in that simplicity, there was everything. The weight of years of silence, of longing, of confusion. All of it seemed to melt away in that moment, as if it had never really mattered. He didn't pull away, neither did I. We sat there for a long time, not speaking, just feeling the truth of it wash over us. He didn't need to say anything else, neither did I. There was something about that touch, about that moment, that spoke volumes more than any words could ever convey. It was a promise, a quiet understanding that things had changed between us, that the past and the future were no longer so separate, that maybe, just maybe, this was where we were always supposed to end up. "Do you think it's too late?" I asked after a long silence. "To say what we've been keeping inside?" He looked at me, his expression serious now, but soft. "No. I think it's exactly the right time." And just like that, everything shifted. The weight of all the questions, all the fear, all the doubt, it didn't vanish, but it lessened. In the quiet of that moment, in the gentle pressure of his hand against mine, I realized that whatever came next, whatever happened between us, would be different. We didn't have to figure it all out right away. We didn't have to have all the answers, but we were on the same page now. And that was enough. We didn't need to rush. We didn't need to know exactly where this would go. But for the first time, I didn't feel like I was standing on the edge of something uncertain. Instead, I felt like I was standing with him. Together. And whatever happened next, whatever we decided to do with this newfound truth, it was ours to figure out. One step at a time. Together. Because in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the past, not the fear, not the expectations that had always hung over us. What mattered was that we were finally, truly, honest. And that honesty had the power to change everything. It's funny how quickly things can shift from clarity to confusion, how a single moment, a single conversation, can rip away the comfort of the familiar and leave you standing in a space you never thought you'd find yourself in. After we confessed what had been buried for so long, those feelings, those unspoken truths, there was a strange silence that hung between us. Not the peaceful kind, not the kind that comes with mutual understanding or comfort. No, this was the kind of silence that felt thick, heavy, almost suffocating. In the days that followed, I couldn't help but feel like we were walking on eggshells, unsure of every word we said, every glance we shared. Something had shifted, yes, but that shift wasn't just freeing. It was overwhelming. It was terrifying. And neither of us knew how to handle it. I didn't know if I should lean in closer or pull away, if I should speak more or stay quiet. All I knew was that the space between us had expanded, no longer comfortable, no longer easy. It was in the little things, the way we avoided eye contact in the mornings, the way his words came out slower, more hesitant, when they used to flow so freely. The lighthearted teasing, the laughter that had always come so naturally to us, had suddenly vanished, replaced by a cold distance. And I couldn't help but feel guilty. Was I the one who had pushed this too far? Was it my fault that things had changed so drastically? There was this constant knot in my stomach, a heaviness in my chest. I couldn't stop replaying the moments leading up to that confession, the words I said, the way he looked at me afterward. Had I ruined something? Had I ruined us? I kept asking myself that over and over, unable to find an answer that didn't lead to more questions. But guilt wasn't the only thing I felt. There was also an aching sense of silence between us, a silence that had once been so comfortable, now laced with tension. We didn't talk about what happened. We didn't address it. Instead, we just avoided it. Avoided the things we really needed to say, the things that had been left hanging in the air between us. It felt like we were pretending nothing had changed, when we both knew it had. In the mornings, I would catch glimpses of him as he moved around the house, his shoulders tense, his gaze distant. I would say something, anything to break the silence, but the words felt hollow, as if neither of us were truly listening. And then there were the nights when the weight of everything unsaid felt unbearable. When I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with thoughts I didn't know how to put into words. The distance between us seemed to grow with every passing moment. I kept thinking about all the years of knowing him, of growing up alongside him. We had always been close, but never in the way I now wanted us to be. And now I wasn't sure where I stood. The line between being family and something more had blurred, and I wasn't sure how to navigate it. Every time I reached out, whether with a look or a word, it felt like I was reaching into nothing. The space between us, once warm and familiar, had become a chasm, too wide to cross without falling into it. And then, of course, there was the guilt that came with the silence. Every time I looked at him, I wondered if he regretted it, if he regretted what we'd shared. Maybe he didn't, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was trying to hide it, trying to ignore the pull between us. He'd stopped teasing me, stopped looking at me with that familiar, playful glint in his eyes. The warmth that once filled the room when we were together had gone cold. I could feel myself pulling back too. I was afraid. Afraid that if I didn't, I would risk everything, that I would push him further away. But I couldn't help it. The silence was too much to bear. The uncertainty was eating me up inside. I didn't know if I could keep pretending that everything was fine, that we were okay when I knew we weren't. It was as if we were two people trying to hold on to a past that no longer existed, not sure if we should move forward or if we should just let go. It wasn't until one night, as the weight of the silence was becoming unbearable, that I realized something. I couldn't keep waiting for him to make the first move. I had to stop being afraid of the distance between us. I had to confront it. I had to face it head on, or I would lose him forever. So, I took a deep breath, gathered all the courage I could muster, and decided that the only way to move forward was to take the risk. I walked into the room where he was sitting, looking at something on his phone, his eyes focused, but his body tense. I could feel my heart beating in my chest, the fear and anxiety creeping back. But I couldn't stop now. I had to say something. "Hey," I said, my voice shaky but firm. "We need to talk." He looked up at me, his eyes soft but guarded. He didn't say anything at first, just watched me like he was waiting for me to say what was on my mind. And in that moment, I knew that I couldn't hide anymore. I couldn't let the guilt and the silence keep pushing us apart. "I can't keep doing this," I said. "I can't keep pretending that everything's fine when it's not. We crossed a line, and now we need to figure out what it means, what this means." He was silent for a long moment, the words hanging between us, heavy with all the things we hadn't said. And when he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than usual, softer, but full of the same weight I had been carrying. "I don't know what to say either," he admitted, his eyes avoiding mine. "I don't want things to be awkward, but I can't pretend it didn't happen. I don't know what this is, but I don't want to lose you, not like this." And just like that, the silence was broken. The guilt and the distance weren't gone, but now we were both facing them. We were acknowledging the elephant in the room, and for the first time it didn't feel like we were avoiding it anymore. The fallout had come, But it wasn't the end of everything. It was just the beginning. The beginning of something that would take time to figure out. But at least now, we were no longer walking in silence, afraid of what we might say or feel. And that, in itself, was the first step toward healing. The air between us had changed. What had started as a quiet, almost innocent connection, something I thought we could ignore, had evolved into something undeniable, something that now hung in the space between us like a truth we were both avoiding. I could feel it in the way his eyes lingered just a moment too long when they met mine, how every word we exchanged seemed to carry more weight than it should have. But nothing prepared me for what was about to happen. We had spent days in silence, walking around each other like we were two people who had forgotten how to speak the same language. The tension was thick, suffocating even, but neither of us knew how to approach the elephant in the room. Neither of us knew how to address what had happened, what we had felt, and what we were supposed to do with it. But that night, as the darkness wrapped around the farm, something broke. A moment that had been building for days, weeks maybe, finally came crashing down. I could feel the change in the way he moved. Every step seemed more deliberate. The way he breathed seemed more controlled, like he was holding something back. I wasn't sure if he was waiting for me to say something, or if he was waiting for the right moment to break the silence himself. But there we were, standing in the middle of the quiet farm, the world around us seemingly frozen. The only sound was the rustle of the wind through the trees, the chirping of crickets in the distance, and then he spoke. "Micah," he said, his voice low and steady, but I could hear the hesitation, the uncertainty in it. It made my heart skip a beat. "I need to tell you something." I turned to look at him, my heart suddenly pounding in my chest. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading and longing for at the same time. The moment he would finally say what we had both been avoiding for so long. He took a breath, looking up at the sky for a second, like he was gathering his thoughts. And when his eyes met mine again, there was something different in them. Something raw, something vulnerable. I've been lying to myself for a long time, Micah. I've tried to ignore it, tried to push it down because it didn't make sense, but I can't anymore. I care about you. More than I should, more than I'm supposed to. The words hung in the air, almost too heavy to hold. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what he had just said. His confession wasn't the one I had expected, but it was the one I had feared all the same. In that moment, I felt every emotion I had been suppressing for so long come rushing to the surface. Confusion, relief, fear, desire, all tangled together in a knot that I couldn't untangle. "I didn't want to feel this way," he continued, his voice quieter now. "I didn't want to admit it, but I've been fighting it for years. You're not just my stepbrother, Micah. I don't know what this is, but it's real, and it's been real for so long, and I couldn't keep pretending anymore." His words hit me like a wave, crashing over me and leaving me gasping for air. He was confessing not just to me, but to himself as well. The weight of the truth he was carrying was almost too much to bear. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the way his shoulders slumped with the weight of the revelation. And for the first time in what felt like an eternity, I allowed myself to really hear him, to let those words sink in, to allow myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this thing we had shared, this unspoken connection, wasn't something I had imagined. That maybe, just maybe, I wasn't alone in feeling what I felt. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. My throat felt tight, like the truth was lodged there, refusing to be set free. But I didn't need to say anything, not yet. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It wasn't uncomfortable, it was different. It was full. "I know this is a lot," Elijah said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what happens next, but I couldn't keep carrying this anymore. I don't want to be the person who hides from what's real. Not with you, not anymore." His confession wasn't just about us. It was about him too. About the years of pretending, the years of fighting something he couldn't control. And in that moment, I realized that we weren't just standing there together, on that quiet farm. We were facing the truth. Finally. And I didn't know what that meant for the future. But in that moment, I knew we couldn't keep pretending. We couldn't keep living in the silence that had been between us. It was time to face the things we had buried. It was time to take the next step. I didn't say anything immediately. I didn't need to. My mind was racing, my heart was pounding, and yet, somehow, there was a strange sense of peace in that moment. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what was happening between us. I wasn't afraid of the truth. I wasn't afraid of how it felt. And I wasn't afraid of what the future might bring. Elijah stepped closer to me, his eyes soft but filled with something intense, something I couldn't quite name. He reached out, his hand trembling slightly as it brushed against mine. "Micah," he whispered, his voice so low I almost didn't hear it. "What happens now?" For a moment, all I could do was look at him. The man standing in front of me was so different from the person I had known for years. He was no longer the stepbrother I had grown up with, no longer the person who had always been just out of reach. No, he was someone else now. Someone who had revealed himself, who had let me see him in a way no one else had. "I don't know," I said finally, my voice barely a whisper. "But I know we can't go back. Not after this." And in that moment, as I held his gaze, I knew that whatever happened next, we would face it together. No more secrets, no more pretending. Just us, and the truth we had finally uncovered. As the days passed, something shifted. Something between us, something I couldn't ignore anymore. The words Elijah had said, his confession, weren't just a declaration. They were a turning point. A moment that pulled the rug out from under everything I thought I knew. I didn't realize how deeply I had been holding my breath, how long I had been waiting for someone else to make the first move, or for the truth to just come to the surface on its own. But now, here we were, standing on the edge of something new. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't alone. For the first time, the weight of the secret, the burden of what we both had been avoiding, was no longer something we carried in isolation. It was shared. It wasn't easy, not by any stretch of the imagination. There were still moments when silence hung thick between us, when I couldn't help but wonder what the future would hold, what the consequences of everything we were doing would be. But as I stood there with Elijah, something in my chest settled. Something deep inside me whispered, "This is the start of something real." I didn't know where it would take us, but I knew we couldn't go back. The air around us was different now. There was no tension, no unease, just a kind of quiet understanding that everything between us had changed. And it wasn't awkward, it wasn't wrong, it was just new. Elijah didn't push me. He never tried to rush anything, never forced me into making decisions or feeling things I wasn't ready to feel. He simply let me be. He let me figure it out in my own time, and I appreciated that more than I could put into words. There was a softness to him now, a vulnerability that I had never seen before. The walls he had built around himself, those walls that had kept me at arm's length for so long, had crumbled. And in their place, there was an openness, a raw honesty that was both terrifying and beautiful at the same time. It wasn't just about what we shared that night, that kiss, the one that had shaken us both to the core. It was about everything that came after it, the quiet moments, the shared glances, the laughter that felt easier than it ever had before. The way we moved through the days, side by side, with a kind of peace that neither of us had expected but both of us had needed. And as much as we tried to pretend, the world around us hadn't stopped. It hadn't paused for us to figure things out. We still had to face the reality of our situation. There were still questions. There was still the complication of what this meant, not just for us, but for everyone else in our lives. We weren't blind to that, but somehow, in those moments together, it didn't matter. With every passing day, I felt myself letting go more, of the fear, of the doubt, of the shame I had carried for far too long. I was starting to believe, starting to trust that this connection we shared wasn't something to be ashamed of, but something to embrace. It wasn't about labels or categories. It wasn't about the rules that society had laid out for us. It was about what we felt, what we had found in each other, When we went on that walk, hand in hand, it felt like the world had tilted just a little. It was the kind of walk where nothing had to be said, but everything was understood. There were no barriers between us anymore. No walls, no boundaries, just two people figuring it out, one step at a time. And as we walked, I realized that we were building something from the ground up, slowly, carefully. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to be without its challenges, but it was ours, and that meant more than anything. When Elijah smiled at me, there was something different in his eyes. Something soft, something real. He wasn't just the older brother I had known all these years. He wasn't the person I had tried so hard to suppress these feelings for. No, he was someone else entirely. He was someone I wanted to be with. Not because of what we had been, but because of what we were becoming. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't have a clear path ahead of us. But we had each other, and that was enough. For the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't scared of what the future held. I wasn't scared of the uncertainty. I wasn't scared of what it would mean for us. Because what we were building was something real. It was something that wasn't based on expectations or fear or what others thought we should be. It was something built on trust, on understanding, on the shared belief that we could figure this out together. And for the first time, I allowed myself to believe that it would be okay. That maybe, just maybe, the world wouldn't fall apart if we embraced this. If we let go of the old stories we had been telling ourselves, the ones that said we couldn't be together, the ones that said it wasn't possible. Maybe we could rewrite our story. As the sun began to set, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink, I looked over at Elijah, and for the first time, I felt like we were standing on the edge of something beautiful. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't easy. But it was ours, and that was all that mattered. We were taking it slow, one step at a time. No rush, no pressure, just two people trying to figure out what it meant to truly be together, to build something real. And as we stood there, side by side, I knew this was only the beginning. Whatever came next, whatever challenges, whatever hurdles, we would face them together. And that thought, that quiet promise between us, filled me with something I hadn't felt in a long time: hope. As we stand on the edge of something new, I want to pause and reflect on what this journey has really been about. It's about breaking free from the things that hold us back. It's about letting go of fear, of shame, and embracing the truth of who we are and who we can be. The path we take, the relationships we build, they're all a product of the choices we make. And sometimes, those choices are difficult. Sometimes they push us to confront things we've spent years avoiding. But here's the thing. Growth doesn't come from staying comfortable. It doesn't come from following the rules or the paths that everyone else expects us to take. Growth happens when we get real with ourselves, when we let go of the lies we've been telling ourselves, and when we embrace the truth that's been hiding in plain sight all along. That's what this story is really about. It's not just about two people finding their way to each other. It's about finding the courage to live authentically. It's about accepting the parts of ourselves we've hidden, about understanding that love, connection, and happiness are all worth fighting for, no matter what they look like or who they come from. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to feel uncertain. But it's also okay to take that step, to move beyond the walls we've built, and to walk towards something better. This is the start of something. And I don't know what the future holds, but I do know one thing: the journey is worth it. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced a moment where everything changed? Where you had to choose between staying where you were comfortable and moving forward into the unknown? If this story spoke to you, if it made you feel something, I encourage you to share that with others. Don't keep these thoughts to yourself. Let's talk about it. Let's create a space where we don't have to hide, where we can be open, where we can face our truths together. If you're ready to embrace who you really are, if you're ready to make those hard choices and take that step into the unknown, then hit that subscribe button. Like this video. Share it with someone who might need to hear it. This is just the beginning, and we're in this together. There's more to come, and I can't wait to share it with you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of this story. And remember, whatever comes next, we're always growing.
always learning, always becoming who we're meant to be. Let's face it together.